Hello, Pierre. Good to see you today.
Hello, Guy. Good to be here.
The focus today is essentially on third parties, which is one of the major focus points of DORA. There are many types of third parties, and so I would like to basically spend a bit of time on this. Even the person, the third party who is managing your building or who is doing the physical security, is clearly an important one.
You're so right when you mention about people managing your building. I remember this big attack that took place against an American bank several years ago. That was through the maintenance of the aircon facility. So yes, third party, even if we believe that at first look, they might not necessarily have access to some of our critical assets, we really need to investigate further. And for every third party, we need to understand exactly what is it that they are touching and what are the potential implications.
I think another angle to the third party, which I would like to mention here is, and which I found in my practice, is that when you have a big organizations, you may share third parties among different teams. In your organization, you may have other types of situations. So don't think in simple terms.
I love it because you're absolutely right. You work in your own vacuum, in your own business unit. You know that you have the third party, and you don't realize that very third party is used by many other business units into your organization. So that triggers the need for someone to sit above and beyond the business unit, to have the responsibility to monitor this, or to at least to have visibility on all the third parties and being able to identify which one of the third parties reach a critical stage where they become almost systemic to your organization.
It is important from a cybersecurity point of view, but it even gets more important when we talk about the resilience. Because not only do we want to prevent things, but when things are happening, we may have to work in certain ways in an integrated and consistent way with the different third parties to get back on track. So I think having a third-party risk manager at some seniority level is important, because I think the trend is also that the number of third parties is increasing year by year, and it's not maybe always so obvious where he should be in an organization. But I think you mentioned before, resilience may be a good place, because that maybe have the more detailed and holistic view.
So visibility on our third parties, which one are critical to us, is something that is really increasingly important for an organization.
DORA gives us a few specific points, which we're going to go through in a moment. But, it's important to make a distinction. Do I want to be compliant to DORA only, or should I look at it more holistically? And I may have to do a few things on top of or beyond DORA. I would recommend people to look more in a holistic way, not just DORA requirements, but look at it in as big a way as you can.
DORA gives some good directions as to what needs to be done. It's by no means exhaustive, and I would confidently say that by being fully DORA compliant does not guarantee that you will do proper, effective resilience with your third parties.
Well, let's jump maybe into DORA specifics. The risk assessment is, of course, the first step. Any comment from your side on risk assessment?
First, risk assessment is essential. Very often that looks like, ticking in a box as opposed to really understanding the implication. That's number one. So risk assessment needs to be real and thorough. And risk assessment also needs to be a continuous one. And the assessment you performed 3 years ago might not reflect the real situation, the real risk landscape generated by that third party today. But we also have to make sure that the people who are in charge to perform this continuous risk assessment are properly incentivized to do that.
Any thoughts about monitoring in general? Is that something you would include, or it happens automatically?
Monitoring, in a sense that I would like to continuously be given some form of right to know the evolution of the infrastructure of my third-party provider. And either that can be just by having them confirm that they remain compliant with some agreed upon standard, or perhaps by having a right to audit, which is a much more sensitive type of discussion. But equally important, I want to make sure that, contractually speaking, if they have any significant incident, they've got to let us know within a certain quick time frame, because we in our turn, we might be obliged to disclose to our regulator. And I also like to do some external monitoring. So above and beyond just asking the third party to tell me if they have an incident, I usually contract with a company that will continuously check their website or check the dark net and see whether any mention is made of that third party. Sometimes we might learn from that dark net and whatnot information that perhaps the third party does not know, does not want to disclose.
The external side, we can use it and we can integrate in our judgment whether we're going in good way. And I always had the discussion that you may have you're a certain company and you may employ a third party. The third party could have a security level higher than yours, or you could have a third party of a security level then lower than yours. And my encouragement always was if they're important and they have a standard which are lower to ours, that we would help the third party in some sense. Next point, which is important, is that some third parties may be bigger, and they themselves may use third parties. What is your experience? I had a few bad experiences on that level. What is your experience on this?
Equally bad experience, because we usually don't ask the third party to disclose their own third parties, i.e. what we would call fourth parties. Now we can assume that many organizations who are with third parties probably use Microsoft or Amazon or Google or Salesforce. We might also identify that they use some more obscure third parties that would be more subject to risk, and that becomes a systemic risk from our point of view, kind of a domino effect. In the most sophisticated organization I have the privilege to work with, fourth parties is a discussion. So not only we want to understand the risk of our third party, but we also want our third party to disclose their assessment of their own third parties. But that really requires some power struggle. Again, if you are dealing with a Salesforce or a large organization, they might say no. Equally, going back to what you said, the importance of sharing and helping each other. I fundamentally believe in the idea of information sharing and analysis center, ISACs, building a closer relationship so that together we can address the cybersecurity or privacy risks. To me, this is something increasingly essential.
Obviously, sometimes the relationship may end. Any considerations on termination or continuity aspect?
I would be very worried of an abrupt termination because my third party is no longer meeting my conditions, or because my third party had a significant security incident. It's fine to have it in the contract. It's carrot and stick again. But in reality, unless you are fully resilient, and for each third party, you've got a backup third party so you can switch, fail over. The reality is, yes, of course, contractually speaking, you can close the relationship right now. But from a resilience point of view, you just can't. It's impossible. So it's better to have an ongoing understanding to make sure that we are resilient in the event of an incident. We just don't close the relationship. We've got to figure out how we can continue and salvage what can be salvaged.
I think that closes the circle also by, where we say, well, we need someone in charge of third parties. Possibly that person should be in the resilience side of the organization, or the resilience management of the organization, because the complexity, looking at the processes where they're involved, and also recovering when some of these things go wrong.
Yes, it's interesting because I see some large organizations I am on the board of. The chief security officer now is in charge of everything: physical security, cyber security, even calling the fire people if there is a fire in a building. I believe that there is increasingly a need for a chief resilience officer, someone who would have the full responsibility of everything that could possibly go wrong, and be tasked with his or her team to ensure to deploy some resilience mechanism across the organization. So right now we have pockets of people in charge of specific risks, such as privacy, money laundering, internal fraud, such as cybersecurity. So I think we should amalgamate that under a resilience responsibility. And the beauty of resilience is that it does not only look at incident, but it also looks at how do we survive over the incident.
In DORA, there's an encouragement to share also information among companies, even though that's, we have to see what that means practically. We have to look at the category mentioned before, when we have pan-European, maybe even systemic third parties, which based on DORA, they fall under what they call the mechanism of the lead overseer. All of us could read what it is, what they say. We hopefully soon we will see, one, what does it really mean and who are those lead overseers? And the second thing is, what are the companies which fall under the lead overseer more on the authority side, and which ones, even though they're bigger, every company individually still has to deal with, maybe only through information sharing. I think the fact that DORA considers a mechanism of lead overseer will make, hopefully, management of these larger parties practical. So I think these were the main points I wanted to cover with you. Please share with us what you learned from your side over time, which may go far beyond what we had the time to cover here. So please use the comment function in YouTube to do so. And thank you so much, Pierre, for sharing your vast experience with our audience.
Pleasure
Thank you.
to be with you. Such a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.